I think many people are describing Vikki as a trailblazer and somebody who was brave enough, talented enough to make it in a world dominated by men and so forth. But I think by saying that, I think it's a bit reductive of who she was and what she meant to the many people who counted her as a friend and a very dear friend. And like me, later on, I only got to know her when I joined the FWA and we started to do some work together, and I discovered somebody. At the beginning, I was a little bit intimidated by Vikki, I suppose. I thought because she has this incredible personality and respect, and that we have for her. And I discovered somebody who was incredibly good fun.
Well, Vikki meant a lot, not just to me, but all her colleagues on The Sun, all the journalists who worked with her in football and in athletics. Feisty character, strong, didn't take any nonsense, very proud to do the job. She loved the fact she was involved in some of the high-profile sports events all around the world. She loved to be there at the cutting edge, loved to be in the mix zone getting the quotes, loved to be there writing her reports, be it football, be it athletics, loved to be part of the gang. For all she promoted sort of women being in sports journalism, women in football, she really wanted to be known as Vikki the sports journalist, not Vikki the woman sports journalist. She really believed that you had to earn the right to do the job, whether you're male or female, not that you were a token woman, if you like, in a man's world. She never thought like that. When she came into this business in the mid-90s, it was a pretty hard business to be in. It still is, but it was very tough then. And she very, very quickly made herself part of the scene, part of the team on The Sun. She was proud to work for The Sun. She wouldn't have wanted to work anywhere else. She loved the edge that The Sun gave.
I first got to know Vikki in the early 90s. We were both covering maybe the lesser beat in football. I was just starting out, so was she. She was nominally working for the Mail as a consumer affairs, which I think was a polite way of saying shopping. But determined to make it as a football writer, which of course she did become on The Sun by 1995. What struck you at first about Vikki was obviously her infectious enthusiasm, that wonderful smile that could light up a room, and her knowledge and her passion and her determination in a pretty unusual position that she was in, a woman in a man's world.
She brought common sense, a different view. I don't think it's unfair to say that traditionally we've almost had a sort of golf club atmosphere in the FWA. She cut through that like a hatchet. Vikki brought us into the third millennium, and the importance of women in the Football Writers Association is now fundamental, and it's built into our structure. And without Vikki, I don't think it would have happened so quickly.
She was the only woman in the room. In fact, I was quite nervous of going to talk to her because I was so impressed by her. She literally just was one of the gang. It made no difference. She was as brave, as vocal, as strong as everyone in the room, and as well respected. But she also was so valuable in terms of support throughout my career. And
the first time I ever remember seeing Vikki was on the final night of the Olympics in Sydney 2000, and we were in a press bar. Last night of the Olympics, hard work was over, everybody up for a good night, and for some unknown reason, maybe the staff wanted to go home early, they wanted to close the bar early, and Vikki was not having it. Vikki led a delegation to keep the bar well and truly open, and to my memory, she won that fight, and the bar stayed open all night, and that was purely down to Vikki's feistiness and determination to have a very good evening after the Olympics was over.
She loved promoting her sports, promoting her own interviews. She'd be on the phone to you saying, this is really good, he says this, or she says this, and this is why it needs to be given prominence in the paper. With the athletics, she was always conscious that she wanted to put it high on the agenda and give me a reason why it should be high on the agenda, why you should give it 600 words and not 300 words, why it should be a spread and not a page, why Jess Ennis was brilliant, why Kelly Holmes was great, why Mo Farah was fantastic, why Paula Radcliffe should be championed. She was big in promoting the sports, wanted certainly the athletics voice to be heard, wanted, say, clubs like Watford, which she covered, her own Sheffield United, to get big shows in the paper to talk about them. She loved talking about her teams, the sports she was involved with.
For someone who knew the barriers and challenges of the football industry for a woman so well, she also knew how to have a laugh about it. She'd be the first person to have a giggle about the state of the ladies' toilets at one of the football clubs that she was covering. She was the person who, when I was pregnant with my first child, was having a joke about how I should bring my baby into the press box and start breastfeeding, and wouldn't it be a laugh to see everybody's faces?
Well, I think all you need really is to look to see a summary of Vikki, is to look at those pictures that appeared on Twitter and on other social media immediately after her death. She had the most beautiful smile you have ever seen, a great big infectious smile. And that really was the sort of person she was. Even when making a trenchant point, she always made it with a joke, with irony, with force, with eloquence.
I first met Vikki at the first ever Women in Football event, and I was a young woman making my way in the industry, and Vikki was this iconic pioneer to me. She had this very calm way about her that continued throughout our friendship. She just used to make me laugh so much. I'd get irate about something and she'd just come back with a one-liner as if to say, I know, dear, but, and then make some sarcastic or knowledgeable, witty remark. But she always did it in this kind of low, slow, calm way.
Vikki was a really special person. She wasn't somebody you'd see on television or hear on radio very much, but she was invaluable to WIF because she helped us behind the scenes. She knew the key figures in sport, and she knew the people that we needed to talk to be able to make a practical difference for the women working in the industry.
And the one thing you appreciate about Vikki is she had this amazing quality of being able to stop time in its tracks and find it for everyone else. I really don't know where she found it from her groundbreaking work with Women in Football, which is such an important outlet for people in an industry that are surrounded by great men, but it's also good to have somewhere to go and talk about things you also always just put to the back of your mind, and that was a real important outlet to me early on in my career, and it continues to be such a brilliant support to women throughout the industry.
Vikki and I became partners in crime at the Marsden Hospital, where I was being treated for throat cancer and Vikki, of course, was being treated for her cancers. And when we saw each other at the Marsden, we really did laugh at the ridiculousness of being in the Marsden, whereas we should have been meeting at the Emirates or Wembley or Stamford Bridge or wherever. So we had this joint kind of friendship that grew out of a very difficult period for both of us. And Vikki was a tower of strength through that period. And really, when I saw Vikki at the Marsden, 2 or 3 times, we actually bumped into each other in the corridors of the Marsden. And in some weird way, it was a very strong, supportive feeling for both of us, I think, to see each other in that hospital.
When she was ill, she was always working hard and planning when she could come back to work. She would come into the office and say, "Can I have a quick word?" And one of the first things she'd do when she sat down, she'd say, I'm still here, and we've got to talk about it. I've got some treatment coming up, but after 2 or 3 days I'll be back, so I want to be down for this match, I want to go to this event." when she missed out on going to the Commonwealth Games in Australia, she was so disappointed. She had one round of treatment during that time and she couldn't miss it. She was really disappointed because she was so proud of the fact she'd been to all the major events, and it was like a little blot that she couldn't get to that one, but she was determined that once she was through that treatment she would be back covering sport again.
You thought, this is so tough, and you'd think any normal person would have taken time off. She didn't. She was in and out of hospital, but she was always working. I think the tributes to her over the last week, not just from our profession, but from sport in general, from football, athletics, Minutes Applause, I think was
the indoor championships.
The weekend just gone. Paula Radcliffe, just getting his hill. Seb Coe. I thought it was an incredibly moving tribute that Seb Coe paid. But it just showed the high regard in which Vikki was held. She was the vice chair, and for a long time was the only woman on the national committee. Not the case now, thankfully, and she was a driving force behind recruiting more women, not just to join the FWA, but to forge a path in the industry, to aspire to absolutely the highest level that you can get to. And listen, she was at that level for a long time.
I became very close to Vikki as well through the book committee of the FWA. I stepped down as chairman and Vikki took over, and in the last, really throughout the second half of 2018, we exchanged a lot of emails, a lot of correspondence about the book committee, and Vikki was one of the most well-read, literary people in football journalism that I've ever come across. She knew every book. She ran her local book fair, and she was an absolutely fantastic colleague on the book committee, really wonderful. And if you said to Vikki, oh, have you seen this book or that book, she'd not only seen it, she'd already read it and already had an opinion about it.
Vikki was passionate about social justice. It was part of everything that she did. It was part of why she was involved in Women in Football, and she brought it with her to every discussion, whether that was about ethics. She would know how an MP had voted on gay rights. She knew how a country, what their human rights record was, what the human rights record of a multinational was. Everything that she did was motivated in that sense by politics, by values, by ethics. Even in her final days, she was championing other women. That was so important to her. She was encouraging Alex Scott, was so happy to see her progressing on the TV. She was happy to see Susie Rack flying at The Guardian, a young writer that she had been nurturing. And for someone who was a trailblazer herself in the industry, it's really significant that she was so invested in seeing others do well too.
She loved everything about it, and everybody enjoyed being in her company. She, as I say, she was feisty. She could hold her own. She could battle with you. Many a football manager would tell you she was no shrinking violet in the back of the room. She'd be up front asking the difficult questions. She would be asking footballers the difficult questions: why they've been sent off, why they didn't score certain goals, why they lost. Vikki didn't duck anything. She was right out there at the forefront, and she earned the respect of her colleagues for that.
I think we went on a trip to a favela with Seb Coe, which Seb was a big fan of Vikki's because obviously she played such a big part in helping to get the Olympics to London. She championed that, and Seb acknowledged that. So you would find people at the top of sport who would always have time for Vikki because she was so influential in so many ways.
I remember Vikki doing so much work for Women in Football while she was actually receiving treatment for cancer. So, for example, she'd be writing with press releases while in a hospital waiting room, and she'd still be attending our events, she'd still be working.
I just miss bouncing ideas off her. Like, it's only been a few weeks since she left us, but I still go to text her stuff or WhatsApp her and say, Vikki, this has happened. And she just knew stuff. She knew the way the industry worked. She was so knowledgeable about everything. Even if we weren't talking about football, I could ask her anything about politics or about social justice or about any other sport, and she just knew stuff.
Somebody who was incredibly brave in so many ways. We knew that she'd been ill for a very long time, and we knew the grace that she showed throughout the whole, ordeal that she had to go through, and how she never allowed it. People talk about fighting against it. The fight here is against what it can do to you, to your personality. She never allowed it, ever, to get in the way of who she was, genuinely, her warmth, her openness to others, the fact that she was so supportive as well of her colleagues, especially younger colleagues, who she was always ready to give a helping hand to. And somebody who was utterly in love with her job, somebody who was utterly in love with what we were doing together, looking, the book committee and so forth, and really trying to make things happen. Somebody who loved reading about sport and football as much as writing about it. And I think we certainly thought that she was such a fount of life that somehow, she'd manage to get through. And I think she did fight, and she did think of life as something to be lived now up until the very end.
Yes, Kaz has two careers, Kaz Mushlinski. He's a sports journalist and he's also a cancer specialist. And Kaz was close to both Vikki and myself. Anyway, last September at the England-Spain match at Wembley, so I happened to see Kaz at half-time in the press box, and I just mentioned that I'd heard that Vikki wasn't very well, and he said he didn't know about this because she wasn't at the Marsden. And I said, no, she's in the local hospital. And Kaz was very alarmed by this because he knew that Vikki should be being treated at the Marsden. At the end of the match, Kaz, as normal, had a problem with his mobile and said to me, can you stay behind afterwards? I need to make some phone calls. I said, yeah, of course I can. So Kaz borrowed my mobile. While other people were polishing off their reports, doing their stories on the England-Spain game, Kaz, in the press lounge, was phoning up hospitals, making sure that Vikki could be transferred from the local hospital back to the Marsden. And it was the most incredible thing of Kaz to be concentrating on helping Vikki first before doing any of his own journalistic work. Vikki did go back to the Marsden, where she did get the specialist treatment that only the Marsden could provide for her. And that was all down to Kaz and a chance conversation.
Well, I think that the last 6 to 12 months of her life, although in the end the outcome was tragic, that time, for all the pain she was going through, for all the anxiety that she and her husband Ian Ridley were going through, there was somehow a serenity and a beauty and a quality about her that had been achieved amid it all. It's difficult to explain, but I think that the relationship between Ian and Vikki deepened and became even more impressive during that period of terrible anxiety for both of them.
Also the fact that she managed to keep working all the way through 10 years of living with cancer is just a remarkable testament to her strength of character. But my last abiding memory of her was at the Football Writers Association dinner when Mike Collett was taking a photo of us and we couldn't stop giggling, and that was the picture I posted on Twitter because it's not very flattering to me, but we were just giggling all the way through it. And she found such strength in such testing times that you just almost thought, even though we knew she was really, really struggling at the end, that somehow there would be another cure, another treatment, because Vikki always had this incredible battle and fight in her, and she is a testament to all of us about finding time for others, but also going through having great strength in the toughest of times.
Well, an absolutely wonderful, funny, wickedly funny, compassionate, warm friend and human being, with the most wonderful smile and a real take. She could get people, it seemed to me, instantly. She could sum them up. She saw through what people were. She saw their true colours, and she was a great friend, and she will be very sadly missed, but her memory will live on.
Vikki was very keen, and we talked together about the fact she'd like a legacy to be left once she was gone, and that is Vikki Orvice scholarship for a young journalist to join the Sun and to do the job in her memory. She'd like nothing more for that person to be a huge success, and to do the job in the way Vikki did it, with such enthusiasm, with such heart, with such love for the job.
Even towards the end, Vikki was still great fun, great spirit, always a smile, still talking about the future, still pushing the causes of women football writers and women in sport. Women in football was a big passion of hers. But more than anything, she was just a lovely person. What I'll remember is that smile. You can't take that away, that memory. And a lovely person, great friend. And she'll be sadly missed.
We'll miss everything that she did for us, but most of all, we'll miss her friendship, because she had that wonderful smile and she was hilarious and she was just a great person to know.
I'll remember Vikki as fun, as feisty, as someone who would be prepared to debate with you all aspects of the job, the sport she was covering, why it deserved more prominence, how despite all the changes in the media that have gone on, she could always still be at the forefront of it. She would always be out there promoting good journalism, promoting women in journalism if you like, but as I said, she wanted to be known as Vikki the sports journalist, and the fact she wanted to be part of this great industry, she loved being part of that industry. She was always sounds strange really, but she was always happy when she was back doing the job, even though she lived with cancer for nearly 12 years. She was always delighted when she got back to be doing the job, because it was what she loved doing most of all.
What struck me about the tributes to Vikki that came in after her death was the amount of love and affection from every level of sport. Her colleagues, obviously, her friends, people she'd helped, supported, people who'd shared her battles with illness, people she'd inspired, people that loved her, and she was one of the good ones.
For me, the abiding memory was of our Football Writers Association tribute night, which we do every year for a huge figure who's made a great contribution to English football. Not always an Englishman, but this year, because of the World Cup and everything about the England team, it was Gareth Southgate. Now, because Gareth is such a popular figure, the room was absolutely packed with, there were celebrities such as Alan Davis, Rachel Riley, sprinkled all over the room, and also a terrific presence from football. And tucked away in a table in the corner were Vikki and Ian. And there was a constant stream throughout the night. You couldn't help noticing the constant stream of visitors to go up and see them and wish them well as they, well, Vikki had that trademark smile, and people knew that she was smiling through pain. And it to me, despite Gary Lineker, despite Gareth Southgate, despite everybody in that room, it was Vikki who stole the show.
And We saw her, we shared a table at the last FWA tribute night at the Savoy. And it's extraordinary somebody, she arrived in a wheelchair with her beloved Ian. And she was resplendent, absolutely resplendent. There was kind of light coming from her and her beautiful smile. So all of this, I don't know if I make a lot of sense because the emotions are still very raw and everything is still struggling to get out. Because we've lost, as I said, a trailblazer, a wonderful journalist, a great servant of the FWA, but especially for many of us, somebody that we were very proud to call a friend.
Well, everyone who goes, who passes away, is irreplaceable, everyone. But somehow, already, I have a sense that Vikki will be remembered, somehow will burn in the memory of those who are left behind. I can't get that smile out of my... And I know other people have said the same. She'll be remembered for that smile, for the irreverent humour, for the caustic wit. But everything was good-natured about her. And I think that combination, quite apart from her journalistic brilliance, which is somehow almost overshadowed by her personality, that will live forever.